I'm pleased to welcome you to the HR Generalist Upgrade course. This is a continuation of the well-known HR Generalist course, essentially an extension or, as I've called it, a true upgrade, which provides a set of 10 additional lessons to those already included in the main course. Overall, it covers topics that I would call advanced growth topics. Today, we have our first lesson, which is dedicated to a strategic session as part of this course. Why should you take this course? If you're an HR generalist, this will allow you to reach a new level in your company. This will enable you to reach a new level and move closer to the role of HR director, which in turn can increase your income by 30 or even 50%. This course has a website that looks like this. At the end, it says page 2, if we haven't met before. My name is Mike Pritula. Here's a list of companies I've worked for, and in my work, I rely on the best global practices which are listed here. So in this course, you'll have homework assignments, and by completing them, you can earn our diploma, provided that you complete them with grades of 4 and 5. For each homework assignment, I provide feedback if you didn't get a grade of 4 or 5, meaning it wasn't perfect. Based on this feedback, you have the opportunity to revise your homework and get your perfect grade. So basically, if you have the will, you can definitely complete all the homework assignments. The course itself consists of 10 lessons. We cover topics such as strategic sessions, candidate sourcing, HR marketing, employer branding, performance, and 360-degree assessments, advanced analytics, working with remote employees and all the specifics of this work, implementing competency models in the company, introducing coaching and mentoring, and managing conflicts. These are topics that will help you reach this advanced level. Today we'll talk about strategic sessions, why they're necessary, how to sell the idea to a CEO, how to prepare for such a session, and how to conduct it. That's our plan for today. So, all right, let's get started. So, a strategic session is part of strategic planning. Strategic planning is necessary for any company. From the smallest corner store or kiosk to a top-tier bank, what's interesting and what's good and positive is that a strategic session is, as they say, not rocket science, not some advanced field of study. In other words, anyone who understands it can do it. It's simply a sequence of correct actions, steps, and exercises. I'll tell you right away that today, in the additional materials, you'll have many documents, supporting materials, and even examples of strategies that might emerge from your strategic session. So you'll have a lot of helpful resources here. So what is it? What is strategic planning? It's a focused, disciplined effort that gives birth to a company's strategy, which leads to actions that shape what the organization is, what it does, why it does it, and what it will do in the future. That's what strategic planning is all about. In itself, from a mechanical perspective, strategic planning is not that complicated. Essentially, we cover just 3 steps. Yes, there are tools that help us do all of this. Without them, of course, it would be difficult to do, but there are only 3 steps. The first step is the current state, analyzing it as a starting point. The second is the future state, that is where we want to end up. And 3, probably the most important, is how we'll get there. This is our action plan. What's the essence? In the first step, we simply analyze what we have. In the second step, we do the planning. In the third step, we deal with implementation and execution. So you see, it's actually quite simple. It's important to understand that an entire team participates in a strategic session and strategic planning. In other words, it's not the job of an analyst or the chief executive officer alone. It's primarily teamwork. And here, team communication, asking the right questions, and how the team generates answers are very important. Moreover, all stakeholders should be interested and involved. Typically, this is the management team. Why is this necessary? Or how to sell the idea to the chief executive officer, what a strategic session is and why it's needed. You can explain it this way. A strategic session is the company's adaptation to the future that's coming. Companies like Kodak, for example, failed to adapt to the future and collapsed. Although they had enormous resources, they only had a few extra years. They realized it too late. They failed. Organizations must anticipate all kinds of changes that are happening rather than adapting to what will happen. It's even worse when they don't adapt at all, after they've already happened. A strategic session allows a company to adapt to the future in advance and maximize the benefits from that future. Next, what benefits can there be? Any director will ask what's good about it and what's in it for them. Well, here's what you get from it. It includes improving the company's efficiency, increasing performance, enhancing understanding of the organizational environment and growth, and improving the quality of decisions made in the company, expanding the organization's capabilities, improving the effectiveness of public relations communication, increasing political and public consumer support, enhancing the organization's importance, employee growth, improving the level of organizational culture, and increasing alignment with changes in the environment. These are the benefits that a strategic session provides. So what are the realities in this area? About 95% of typical employees don't understand the company's strategy. Nearly 90% of organizations fail to execute their strategy. Approximately 80% of executive teams spend less than an hour per week discussing strategy, and executive teams don't link strategy to budgeting. That is, the executive team is the top management team in active English. Thus, not every company is successful. In other words, companies that don't take business seriously, don't take strategy seriously, very often drop out of the market due to various situations that occur. A strategic session is, to some extent, even insurance against a negative future. Next, a 5-step plan can be applied to the strategic session. That is, how the strategic session is planned. There are certain stages by going through which we can get a great strategy. Step number 1 is determining the starting point. There are specific tools for this that we'll examine. Step number 2 is defining the horizon. That is where we want to end up. Step number 3 is formulating a list of actions. Step number 4 is implementing changes. And step number 5 is measuring what we've come up with and maintaining it. That's the 5-step model. So the first step, determine the starting point. So when building any route, for example, even in a navigation app, when you call a taxi, you have to show not only where you want to end up, but also where you are now. This is an important planning stage. The same applies to a company in strategy development. It's important not to just say we want to be there as a company in a year or 2 or 3, but that could just be fantasy. We should say that we want to move from point A to point B within this specific time frame. So we need to understand where, in fact, we are right now, what's happening to us, and what we can build upon. The second step is defining where we want to be. That is, it's the image of our future, where we aspire to go. Here we set the goal of the task. Here we describe our future vision and what we will be moving towards. Step number 3 is action. This is perhaps, I think, the most important step. Now, companies are saying our strategy is a set of goals. When there's just a set of goals, it's far from being a strategy. It's not a strategy at all. It's just a declaration of goals, because I too can want many things in my life. But if I have some plans, they're just my wishful thinking. For example, I might want to lose weight, lose 20 kilograms in a year, or on the contrary, gain 20 kilograms of muscle mass in a year. But if I leave it at that and don't plan how I'm going to do it, if I don't plan to change my diet, don't plan some physical activity, don't plan something else, I won't make any progress. It will just be a set of goals. Moreover, these goals will start to frustrate me very quickly because I'm not making progress towards them. That's why action planning is very important. Then these actions need to be implemented. In other words, you cannot just put it down on paper. We have written it down so nicely and put it aside, then gone back to work. Our plan needs to be implemented. It is already known that the OKR system can help here. We will talk about it today. It is important to measure and maintain. It is important to look at whether it is working or not, some metrics that help us track how much progress we are making. And then some actions are taken based on this. Maybe adjust our plan. Now in more detail, all 5 stages. All 5 steps are depicted like this. First, second, third, fourth, fifth. As you can see, they cover the 3 major first steps we discussed earlier and 2 additional ones. And there are different tools, different exercises that need to be done to make it all work. Today, we will try to cover the main tools for a strategic session. So first, it is really cool when the CEO does what is called the kickoff in English. It is like a pitch or a start from which everything begins. In other words, it is like an official announcement that we are starting. Here is an example of such a kickoff, that is the kind of letter that a director might write. This is, of course, a very universal example. You should adapt it to your own needs. There are some nuances to consider when writing, but I will say it again. It is really cool when the start of a strategic session begins with an official letter from the CEO. First comes the preparation, not the session itself. Next, typically, it takes about 40 days from the start of preparation to completion, and about 44 actions that are carried out during the preparation of the strategic session. We will cover the most essential parts, the most important things that need to happen. So, first, there should be a team that will be responsible for planning the strategic session, and the team should be trained. That is, there should be someone who is the driver of all this. You could be that person, and possibly also the chief financial officer or the marketing director. I recommend having several people responsible for all this, not doing it alone. Next comes the preparation for the strategic session. First of all, you need to understand your starting point and figure out where the company is now. It is useful at this first stage to analyze the company's mission, vision, and values. Here they are called the guiding principles of the organization. They can be called either way. This is what we know as corporate culture, which we have discussed before. At this stage, during the preparation for the strategic session, it is customary to review these things. That is, they might have changed. Therefore, it is worth reviewing the company's mission again. Here, is a checklist for reviewing the mission, describing it, finalizing it, if it was not ready before. If it is ready, maybe rewrite it, maybe revise it. Next, you need to formulate the organization's vision. And here, if you already had a vision, this is the perfect time to revisit it. Because even after 6 months, the vision can change. That is, the company saw its future in a certain way. 6 months have passed and now it might see it differently, so it is useful to review and change it. Here is an example of how a vision can be developed. And here is a vision checklist, which outlines the criteria your organization's vision should meet. The role of vision in a strategy session is important because it shapes everyone's desire to achieve it. It motivates, and it allows you to plan, roughly speaking, for example, a vision for 5 or 10 years ahead. A strategy session is a strategic plan for 1, 2, or 3 years. It turns out that the strategy represents the first steps towards achieving the vision. Next, it is very useful to review how relevant all teams are and how relevant the mission and values are. Here is an example of how you can review everything with your team. Preferably, this should be a team effort during a meeting. This can be done before the strategy session as preparation during the preparation phase to review the mission, vision, and values, and then together at the strategy session. Integrate all of this into the strategy. Next, you can use an advanced tool such as a survey on mission, vision, and values in order to involve more people at this point and get opinions from even more people. You will have an additional file with questions for the survey. We plan, then conduct, analyze, and prepare a report. Here, all the stages are briefly written on how to conduct such a survey. So, in the additional materials for today's lecture, you will have such a survey. And this is a letter from the Chief Executive Officer for this questionnaire. Next comes organizational culture. Here we analyze many aspects. That is, during the preparation, again for the strategy session, we understand for ourselves what its structure is. Next is environmental scanning. We can do environmental scanning, again, before the actual strategy session, filling out 2 documents. These are SWOT and PESTEL analyses, already familiar to you, but in the context of the whole company and at the strategy session itself, we will simply review them. The preparation team can prepare, and the whole team participates in the strategy session. That is how it looks. The preparation team is 3 people, and the strategy session involves top managers, for example, 8 to 10 people from the company. Here, during the preparation stage of the strategy session, we fill out the analysis. This is an acronym for the 6 components of external environment scanning. We analyze politics, societal economics, technology, environmental legislation, and look at how these can affect the company. Well, and you, as human resources, can also look in parallel at how this affects human resources, and then your own analysis. Here we fill in our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Yes, after the first stage of preparation, we come to the stage where we are heading. Here we are. As a matter of fact, this is where we conduct the strategy session. So the first stage can be done before the strategy session, a maximum analysis of where we are, and the second stage is best done through focus groups. The second stage is best conducted during the strategy session. During the strategy session, the company discusses where it wants to be. There is a specific schedule, we will take a look at it, and this can even last for several days. It's generally considered that the standard duration is 2 days. Sometimes the strategy session follows an accelerated format. 1 day, in some companies, it can last 3 days. For conducting a strategy session, it's very important to choose the dates and venue in advance because it usually needs to be booked, and the dates should be available for all top managers. That is, top managers should not be on vacation, should not be on business trips, or at any other events. It is recommended to schedule the session in the calendar 2 months before holding the strategy session. Then the session itself is held over these 2 days. It's very helpful to have a facilitator here. This is the person who guides the strategy session. This facilitator is very capable of simplifying people's work. Of course, HR can also be a facilitator, especially if they've taken a facilitation course. We have such a course in our academy. Even without taking the course, it's possible if, the strategic session is conducted in a light, simplified format. And it's great if, of course, you invite an external facilitator. A facilitator is typically an experienced person. A professional facilitator, for example, can cost $5,000 for 2 days. This is someone who specifically focuses on strategic sessions. There are general facilitators who might cost $1,000 for 2 days. Just to give you an idea of a facilitator's profile, my acquaintance Andrei Pivovarov, who conducts a huge number of these sessions, and he's truly an expert in this field, our preparation for the strategic session. I said the participants should be invited as early as possible so they don't have anything booked or any vacations planned. It should be convenient for everyone, and it's worth informing everyone about the common goals. Here's the timeline of what should happen before the strategic session. So 60 days in advance, you identify participants, inform them, choose a location, coordinate schedules, select a facilitator, invite them, and write a letter from the CEO. Send reference materials with a summary analysis, including approved mission, vision, and values, and then conduct the strategic session itself. This is what an agenda for a 2-day strategic session might look like. Let's take a look together. Day 1, registration, then the CEO's opening remarks and introduction, followed by an explanation of strategic planning. Culture survey results, guiding principles, questionnaire results, environmental scanning. That is, here's the PEST analysis. Then a break. Then exercises for defining the mission and introducing guiding principles by the participants based on what they've seen prepared. Then they do an analysis, refine the mission, vision, and guiding principles, have a break, and then familiarize themselves with what will happen on day 2. It's intense mental work, so it usually ends not at 5 or 6 in the evening, but a bit earlier. Day 2 starts with the CEO's opening remarks, a review of day 1, conducting a gap analysis. That is, analyzing the difference between where we want to be and where we are. Developing strategic perspectives, which are the directions we want to move in. Then formulating goals and objectives, finalizing work on goals and objectives, linking goals and objectives to strategic perspectives. I will show you the tool a bit later. Addressing questions about the next stages of strategic planning, followed by debriefing and closing. That's how it all looks. The main steps of the session: preparation, registration, implementation, completion, and conclusion. And here are the main tools that are used. Key strategic questions that should be asked during the strategic session. Here they are. What business should we be in? How do we secure funding to realize our mission? How do we reorganize and manage our organization to fulfill the mission, and so on? Here is the preparation stage. What answers are we looking for? What questions are we trying to answer? This is about the strategic session itself. It is important to understand that a strategic session is, first and foremost, a brainstorming session. When people generate different ideas, these ideas are grouped, analyzed, selected, and approved. Broadly speaking, the principles of standard brainstorming are applied here. The location where everything takes place plays a very important role, and it's recommended to hold it outside the company and not to choose a too formal option. Somewhere out of town would be an ideal venue. This is a checklist for the venue and location of the strategic session, meaning what should be there. A reminder that calendars need to be coordinated. This is about choosing a facilitator. I would actually recommend inviting a facilitator. Why? Because, for example, the person who facilitates the strategic session is not themselves a participant in the strategic session, meaning they don't generate ideas themselves. And you, as CSTs, it's preferable that you generate ideas. This is useful for building trust with other business leaders. And overall, you have a lot of knowledge and understanding about the company, so your thoughts and ideas are very valuable to the company. Next, there's a letter from the Chief Executive Officer 14 days before the session. This is about what materials should be sent to participants 5 days before the strategic session. Accordingly, if any of this is not ready, you must prepare it. This is a brief overview of the session structure, without a schedule, just the main elements, in more detail. The first day, what is described: registration, greetings from the Chief Executive Officer, introduction, how to do it, explaining what strategic planning is, reminding about the survey results. The file is in your additional materials. Essentially, what you present, what you ask, then work with the analysis. Mission or guiding principles, SWOT analysis. It's already prepared in advance. The group has proactively filled it out, but participants review it and refine it. That's why it's good when it's prepared in advance. People have something to work from. They don't waste time starting from scratch. They get involved. This is the conclusion. The second day, again in more detail, everything that should happen on the second day. Here are the tools that should be used. We'll look at them in detail now. So the idea is that here, ultimately, we should come out of the strategic session with several key points. We should get a set of goals, and it's recommended to set goals in 4 directions. Here, a simple principle is used called the balanced scorecard, which states that goals should be in the areas of stakeholders, that is, customers, resources, processes, and learning and development. We set goals. We choose so-called projects that we will implement to achieve these goals. We define the indicators we need to reach, and we set deadlines for when we want to accomplish this. The idea is that we take our company vision. Based on our mission and guiding principles, we form a set of goals. From the goals, project tasks and objectives are born. Here is a more detailed description of what is what. That is the definition of goals, how it happens, examples of goals, description of goals. It is very important to prioritize goals to correctly choose the most important ones. Keep in mind that there may actually be too many goals, and you will need to choose the most important ones. This template, the document template, is one of the options. Alternative versions will be available in today's supplementary materials for this lecture. This is a template of what the outcomes of a strategic session might look like. So there are 4 strategic directions here. They do not change. You have a set of goals that you formulate yourself. There are tasks. What are goals and objectives? So if you remember the system, we formulate the objective and key results. The same example applies here. We first write the goal, then the task, and here there are even more components. There we have goals and key results, and here we have goal, tasks, projects, and metrics. So we break it down into 3 parts. There is a goal, what we want to achieve, a task, how we will achieve the project, what we will do for it, and metrics, how we will measure it all. You will have several ready-made strategic plans in your supplementary materials. They are prepared in quite an interesting way. Using these documents as examples, you can see how this is prepared in a company. Task development takes place. It is written here how I use the OKR property. Finalization of the goal, task, and is linked to strategic alignment. There is an example. Next, responsible persons are chosen and the next steps are planned. It is important to understand that everything does not end at the strategic session, but rather begins, and then refinement happens within the company. Next, we plan how we will implement our strategic plan. Here we prepare a document, as detailed as possible, where everything is described. We avoid any general, high-flown words that are sometimes used in strategy and instead write very specific things. As a result of the strategy session, you should end up with a final document of 10 to 12 pages. Not more, not 50 pages for 3 years. Then it is useful to communicate the strategic plan to everyone in a timely manner, to explain it to everyone so that everyone understands it as fully as possible, and then develop an implementation plan. Again, here you can apply the OKR system you are already familiar with. That is, your strategic plan should then be distributed to all departments in the company. Accordingly, there should be people who will be responsible for its implementation. Well, here is an example of an implementation plan. Additional points may come up here. This implementation plan is taken for each objective. It is as if we had it. It is broken down into more detailed steps. Resources appear, money, responsible people, start, finish. Well, it is like a project plan, somewhat similar. Next, we work with metrics that allow us to track our strategic session. Here are examples of what the metrics should be. And the key results of OKR, that is what allows us to work regularly on implementing this strategy. A reminder of how it is all planned out, connecting top-level goals with lower-level ones. And I will remind you that, for example, a system like Force can make everything easier for you because you can do everything inside it. Plus, do not forget to use the discount. Homework. So today we have been introduced to the tool of a strategic session and how it is conducted. And I forgot to mention that if you invite a facilitator, they will likely have their own document templates. That is normal. My task today is to tell you what to expect, show you what documents there might be, demonstrate the sequence of actions, and highlight important stages. But most likely, not to turn you into a strategic session facilitator yet. Well, it is impossible to do that in just one session. At the very least, you need to take a course on facilitation and a course on strategic sessions to be able to facilitate personally. With today's knowledge, you can effectively sell these strategic sessions to management, choose a facilitator, and assist the facilitator in the strategic session. The only thing is, when you have a facilitator, discuss with them what documents there will be, what exercises they should present, and explain this. It is not something secretive, and you will have examples in the additional materials. Today I showed as an example Andrei Pivovarov's work. He shared an example that he uses. And of course, if you're considering top experts, I can also recommend Andrei himself. The homework assignment will be as follows. Considering the specifics of your company, write a plan for conducting a strategic session. That is, how you would conduct it, what specifically you would do. Don't hesitate to use examples from today's lesson, adapt them as much as possible to your needs, and write it out. It's like an agenda. Day 1, day 2, what will happen afterwards. Like that. Just gather the information, digest it, and propose your version. The material is a great webinar from strategic session facilitator Andrei Pivovarov. We conducted it together, so there's my introduction and then how he conducts it. I highly recommend listening to it. He specifically shares his vision. This doesn't mean it's the only correct way. He shares his vision, tells about his experience, and some of his case studies. It's a great addition to today's lesson. Check it out. Books, strategy books, 2 of them. I recommend them. They are very relevant, modern, and considered the best in the world. And with that, the first lesson ends. The next one will be about candidates. I want to reiterate, if you're not already on this course with us, join in. I will be happy to guide you through all 10 lessons, check your homework, and give you feedback. Have a good day, everyone. Bye.